Welcome everybody to this JMC webinar, this next installment of the 6 Ways of Grading series on feedback without a summative grade. My name is Jake Vanskoy. I am your host here from Eastern Iowa. I'm a trainer with JMC. I'm just starting my 3rd year full-time with JMC. Very excited about that. And prior to that, I worked in a public school in Eastern Iowa with a few other public schools, actually, for 15 years as a classroom teacher and instructional coach, technology integrationist, data specialist. You know, when you're in the education field, you tend to wear a lot of hats, and I wore a lot of those hats. And of the hats that I wore, collecting data for standards and assessments was among the top of my responsibilities. So happy to be bringing you this part of the 6 Ways of Grading series, where we will explore utilizing all of the competency-based grading feedback functions to help move student learning forward. Today, we're particularly looking at using the competency-based grading module for formative feedback. So if you are tracking student behaviors, or if you are tracking IEP or student performance toward an IEP goal, or any learning goal for that matter, that does not necessarily get translated into a course grade or a standard-based report card, this is kind of the opportunity for you. So we'll take a look at setting up that CBG module for formative feedback, providing feedback in CBG, and then viewing formative assessment reports. So if you have any questions, as always, please use that Q&A chat feature right there in the webinar menu, and we'll get started here. So setting up CBG for formative feedback. JMC Teachers Competency-Based Grading Module offers a comprehensive solution for implementing competency-based grading and providing formative feedback to students. It enables teachers to create assessment areas aligned with standards, track student progress through tagged formative assessments, and define multiple assessment proficiencies with assigned colors and abbreviations. The module allows for easy customization, including proficiency scale definition, assessment area addition, and formative assessment creation. Teachers can utilize the full suite of tools without tying the results back to a summative grade, empowering them to offer valuable feedback to support student learning. So in instances where it is not necessarily appropriate to associate a course grade or even a mark on the report card for some student feedback, we can also utilize CBG, and it is built right into JMC Teacher without any additional purchasing or anything like that. It's available for you today. So in JMC Teacher, you're going to head to competency-based grading, define formative assessments to get started on a few basic setup steps. We'll start with defining your proficiency scale, then we'll add an assessment area, and then we'll add a formative assessment. So defining your proficiency scale, if you've been following along with this series, or if you have been using competency-based grading, this step is really no different than defining a proficiency scale for either a standard-based report card or a course grade. A proficiency scale is made up of multiple assessment proficiencies or results. You define all of those possible proficiencies to ensure a complete scale. So step 1, we're in JMC Teacher under competency-based grading, define formative assessment. We start by selecting a course from this course drop-down list. Step 2, we select the number of results from the number of results drop-down list in the upper right-hand corner here. So essentially, the number of results refers to how many proficiencies are in your scale. So if you think about the feedback that you give students, is this on a 4, 3, 2, 1, or a meets or developing or beginning and incomplete scale? However many of those results you would have, that's the number that you would select in that drop-down list there. So step 3, now you begin defining each of those results. So step 3, you click the edit link next to a proficiency row to begin defining those results. You select a color from the color picker right here to associate a color with your to correspond with your result, which is a great visual cue for learners and for families to know if their kiddo's on track. That green, I always associate green with good. Green means go. So I was always like, let's put green at the top end. I've also seen folks use blue or purple as exemplary, which I suppose has a royal quality to it. Unique colors for each proficiency result make reviewing student progress reports easier, as families can look for patterns of colors to understand their students' learning progress. It also helps along teacher conference. So step 5, enter an abbreviation, 3 letters or fewer, in the name column to create a display name for the result. And this display name will appear right inside the box when we start to score formative assessments. Step 6, you'll enter a number value in the column to set a ranking order for your proficiency scale. So since this is formative feedback, essentially this value does not necessarily calculate to anything, but it does set the order in which your proficiencies would land. So, if your highest is a 4, if you have 4 results, your highest is a 4, next highest is 3, 2, and 1, so on. So it just establishes that ranking order for each of those results. And then you'll enter a brief description. What does this mean? So I see green, I see this name, I might even see the value, but what exactly does that mean? Does that mean my kid's on track? Are they meeting the grade level standard? Do they still have some work to do? So however you would define that, you can enter that in the description and then click the update link when you're finished. So you might notice a couple of other fields on here, an exempt category and a standard-based result definition and a proficiency target. None of these really matter for you if you are just calculating, or if you're not calculating a result to a course grade. All of these categories, the exempt category, the standard-based result definition, and the proficiency target categories only pertain to if you're using a standard-based report card or if you are calculating results to a course grade. When you're finished, you click the update button and then repeat all of those steps until all the results are defined on your proficiency scale. So let's take a brief live look at defining your proficiency scale in JMC Teacher. I'll orient you, head back home. So this is the landing page in JMC Teacher. I'm going to head to competency-based grading, define formative assessments. I'm going to select my course. In this case, I'm going to work with this music course. Select my number of results. So let's say, you know what? I'm just going to do 2 results here, meeting and not meeting. So the first result, I'm going to click the edit link to define it. And in my case, green is going to be good. And I'm just going to put met. And then the value for this is 2. And then for description, I'm going to say meeting target. And then for my second result, I'm going to choose red. And I'm just going to name this not and give it a value of 1 and say not meeting target. I've seen proficiency scales get much more complex than just this. For example, you might have a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale where we might have meeting and developing and beginning and incomplete. But for folks that might be using this to track progress toward IEP goals, for example, or behavioral goals, you might just have those 2 results. So I'll leave that completely up to you. It is customizable, so you can use it however you see fit. And if you have any questions on creating a proficiency scale, please shout them out now. If not, we'll keep right on rolling. I'm not seeing any questions popping through, so we will move right along to adding an assessment area. An assessment area is the logic container for multiple formative assessments. It's essentially a category for for formative assessments. You create an assessment area, and then you would add the formative assessments that fit under that assessment area in the next step. So to add an assessment area, we would select the course. We're still on the same page. We're under defined formative assessments. We'd click that add button next to an assessment area, next to the assessment area drop-down list there. And then we would simply enter in the assessment area name in that assessment area name field to name the area that is being assessed. Step 2, we are going to choose the formative radio button in the assessment area type box to use the CBG module for feedback purposes. So this is the key difference between using a standard-based report card, using a course grade, and reporting no results at the end of the term. This formative means that we are simply going to use this category for formative feedback purposes. The results are not going to be calculated in any way to any summative grade. You can use this option, actually, if you are a teacher that is reporting to a course grade or to a standard-based report card, but you're choosing not to include a category in that calculation. You can use the formative category to include that information in the teacher, in the family portal and in the student portal, and even run formative assessment reports on it that don't impact a student grade. One of the things that a lot of the standard-based grading gurus talk about is separating behaviors from academics. And this is a very viable option for doing so. You will have the behaviors available on your reports, but they don't necessarily impact a student's grade. So think of academic behaviors that could impact a student's grade, like, not turning work in on time. That's very much a behavior. We very much want to keep track of it. But if we are trying to use our grades as the cornerstone for what a student knows and can do, it might not be appropriate to include that specific behavior in the grade. So this allows you to disaggregate your results very easily. If I were maybe a special education teacher, it might not be appropriate for me to grade a student on standards that are not necessarily at grade level, or if I'm using special education services to supplement a student's learning and they are actually being graded in another class, I can use CBG to track my students' progress toward those learning goals with this formative option right here without it reporting to a course grade or to a standard-based report card result. So a couple different ways or reasons that you would use formative. I also have some schools that choose to experiment with CBG, but they might not necessarily be ready to jump headfirst into competency-based grading principles. So they might use this formative option as just kind of a tool for tracking student progress to kind of see how things work before transitioning completely to reporting summative results through CBG to a standard-based report card or to a course grade. So several different options or reasons for using this formative option. I just wanted to point those out here because this is really the page or the option that separates those results. Once you have added your assessment area, it's time to add the formative assessments that are associated with that assessment area. Formative assessment is the learning target that contributes to a standard or assessment area. You can add multiple formative assessments or learning targets for the assessment area to form that learning progression. So I've also seen other folks use this a little bit differently than the way that I'm describing it here. Some folks like to call an assessment area a unit, which you can categorize your formative assessments by unit. That's absolutely a viable option. But if you think of a formative assessment as the piece, the target, the essential learning that you are formatively assessing throughout the term, that's probably the best way to think of it. So step one, you'll click that add button. So you've selected the assessment area from that assessment area drop-down list. You'll click the add button beneath the formative assessment box there to begin adding a formative assessment. And then step two and step three, this is pretty self-explanatory. You enter the learning target in the formative assessment field. So it's not predefined. It's something that you define right up front. This could be an I can statement. It could be the goal as expressed on an IEP, for example. It could be a standard. It could be a behavior that you're tracking. Step 3, you'll select the number of times that you are assessing that formative assessment from the number of assessments drop-down list. These are the number of opportunities that your student is showing their proficiency within this target. So you can continually add to this number. You could start adding, 1, and then come back next week and add a second, add a third. If you're not sure how many times you're going to formatively assess a benchmark, no problem. Simply add the number of assessments as needed. Step 4, you'll click the Save button to add the formative assessment, or click the Cancel button when finished adding the formative assessment. So let's take a live look at adding assessment areas and formative assessments. So I'm going to head back to my music course. This is under, once again, competency-based grading, define formative assessments. I'm going to add an assessment area by clicking the Add button. I'm going to make this formative, and I am assessing behaviors. That's my category. And now I might have some different targets for behaviors that my students are needing to meet. So if I add one behavior is I can show up to class on time and ready to learn. And I'm just going to start assessing this one time, and I'll show you how I can come back and add to this as needed. Maybe another formative assessment, I can display behaviors of a safe and caring student. Obviously, you would define that with your kiddos and let them know what that means. And they're up front, they're in with this language with you. So however they're going to relate to these formative assessments, or these pieces that you're going to be monitoring and coaching them up on, you'll add that language right in here. And this will be available for your kids and your families in the family portal. And you'll also be able to track these in the gradebook, which is what we're getting to next. And if there aren't any questions, I'll get right into that gradebook to show you how to start tracking. And really what CBG is all about is providing feedback. And as Rick Wormley says, students can learn without grades, but they can't learn without timely descriptive feedback. And that is what the competency-based grade book intends on doing, is providing that feedback to students in a manner that's easy for teachers to enter, and it's easy for students and families to digest and understand, so they know exactly what needs to be worked on. The purpose of competency-based grading or standard-based grading is to eliminate any barriers associated with learning, such as scores and percentages. We want our students to focus on the learning goals. So now that we've set up our proficiency scales, defined our standards and learning targets, we're ready to use that gradebook module for tracking student results. So we're going to head to competency-based grading, score formative assessments to get started. Step 1, we're going to select the course from the course drop-down list to access the standards for that course. Step 2, we're going to select a standard from the assessment area drop-down list, or a unit, however you're categorizing your assessment areas. Which, by the way, this language is customizable. So if you don't like the terms assessment area and formative assessments, you have something better that you want to use the word standard in here. In JMC Office, you can change this terminology to fit your district's philosophy. So you'll select that I can statement, or that target from the formative assessment drop-down list. Step 3, I skipped over that. And the fun fact, you'll see the student names on the left-hand side. You'll see any assessments that you've added over here across the top. And I just chose to add one. So you're just going to see one column, and I can come back and I can add to that as needed. Step 4, you can double click on an assessment name to add an assessment description and date, so that you can keep track. I think of, formative progress for an IEP, you might choose to describe week by week. So, you might have week 1, week 2, week 3, or you might do this daily, depending on what the goal is. So you could name these after, you'll have the dates there available, but you can name this description after the type of assessment you're using to try to pull that data. So if this is an exit ticket or a conversation or a portfolio piece or a piece of student writing, an artifact, a test, a quiz, you name it, whatever you're using to gather this data can go in that assessment description there. And then step 5, you click the result from an empty box and you select one of your results from the drop-down list that pulls up. And it's as simple as that. So let's take a look at providing feedback in CBG. So I'm just going to go home, show you how to get here once again, try to build that pathway. So we're going to go to competency-based grading, score formative assessment. You can see this automatically popped up because this is the last one that I was working with. So I have my course there, this music course. I've got my behaviors and I've got the items that I'm formatively assessing on this list. So I can show up to class on time and ready to learn. All right, so let's say I am going to assess this by week. So I'm just going to go week 1 and I make my assessment on the Friday that ends week 1. So save. And I'm going to go ahead and define I can display behaviors of a safe and caring student. And I'm going to also call this week 1. And I'm going to define this as the same day. So end of the week comes around. Like, all right, so did little Tommy Freed show up on time, ready to learn? No, he did not. Did Paulina? Yes, she did. As a matter of fact, almost all my students did, except for little Tommy Freed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill score column, say, yeah, everybody showed up on time. And then I'm going to come back here to Tommy and I'm going to say, no, he did not meet that. So that's all there is. So literally I gave my entire class feedback in about 20 seconds for week 1. So this can very, very easily be a part of a part of class. If you're standing there with your laptop, you're carrying your laptop around, you've got your computer up on your desk, quickly give those students feedback. You're remaining in communication with your families, with your students. You're tracking these results as you go. So when it comes time for those teacher conferences, those parent teacher conferences, you can pull up your assessment reports and everybody can see what's been going on in your class. So I'm going to give some more results here, and maybe I can display behaviors of a safe and caring student. Maybe, Holly did not meet that this week, and, neither did Bill. And I might even add a score note in here. So I can edit a score note and say, Bill had a little issue keeping his hands to himself this week. I can apply it to this student or all students. In this case, it just is applicable to this student. This shows up with a little star next to it, and this note will show up in JMC student and JMC family. So not only will I have this available for my records, your families can also, so you don't have to send that message home every week. How's the student doing? Well, check JMC's grade book, check the formative progress, and you can see exactly if he's on track with his behavior goals. Are there any questions? I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I did want to show you how to add another formative assessment result. So, it's time for week 2. I can come in here. I can go, it's time to add week 2. Come in here, add another result, click save. In here, add another result, click save. So I'm going to go through that slowly. All I did was I clicked on the formative assessment, whichever one. I click the edit button, and then I can come back here and I can add to the number of assessments as needed. I click the save button. In this case, since I already saved, I already have 2. And now when I go back to score formative assessments, you'll see there's another result on here. So I can define this as, this is week 2. I Date this. Now I could add these all up front if I wanted to, and I could define these all up front if I wanted to spend, 5 minutes setting up my grade book for the entire quarter. I could absolutely do that, or I could just add as I go. That's totally up to teacher preference. Sometimes this gets kind of cluttered if we have, 8 weeks worth of results. So it's totally up to you. I'm just going to give some more results here, just so my reports show something that has a little bit more to it. Let's go week 2. Date that. Highlight the result there. So it's outlined in blue, fill score column. So then all of my results will port down, and I'm going to give a couple others. And you know what? I'm going to give Bill a shout out, because this week it's scoring out much better job of being a safe and caring student this week. Your families are going to want to see that too. So, any questions on adding results to individual students and tracking those results? Up next, we've got viewing some formative assessment reports. So the formative assessment report within JMC Teacher is a useful tool that provides a concise overview of a student's progress toward a learning goal. With just one page to review, you can quickly access a student's proficiency level and identify areas that may need additional support. Running a formative assessment report for an individual student or multiple students enables you to track their skill development over time. You can easily print out a copy of their report to bring to an IEP meeting or email it to stakeholders to keep everyone informed about a student's progress. In JMC Teacher, you're going to head to competency-based grading reports, formative assessment reports to view student progress toward learning goals. Step 1, you'll select a course from the course drop-down list to begin viewing all formative assessment data associated with the selected course. Step 2, you'll click the students' names to run the formative assessment report for a selected student. Helpful tip, hold the control if you're running a Windows machine or the command button while selecting multiple students, or place a check mark in the select all checkbox to include all students. So you can run this report dynamically for the number of students that you need to see. Step 3, you'll click the preview button to view a list of the assessment areas, formative assessments, and results for the selected students. Step 4, the optional step, place a check mark in the email if possible and or email students checkboxes to enter an email address in the reply to field to email the report to primary contacts and students. Helpful tip, click the choose file button and enter additional information in the email message field to round out email communications sent with the formative assessment report. So I've got some schools like to use this as their midterm report card. So as opposed to using this works whether you use this for course grades or for formative assessments or just formative or standard-based report cards. You can email this report to your families, and this kind of stands in place of that additional report card process. It's really quick and simple and easy to do. So step 5, you'll click the print button to save a PDF hard copy or print a hard copy and simultaneously send an email of the formative assessment report if applicable. So that's how you do it right there with that print button that activates all of the things that you have just done. So let's take a live look at setting up this, running these CBG reports. We are, again, now actually there's one step when I scored that I did not do. I didn't click the publish button. And what the publish button does is it allows my students and families to see formative progress, and it lets me know I have 12 records published. So I usually like to keep up to date with that on a weekly basis. So we're going to head to under competency-based grading. I'm going to go to reports, and we're going to go formative assessment report. And I'm just going to select all so we can see all. So I've got my music course. I click preview, and you can see here, I've got each of my students. Sorry. It's got the student name up top. It's got the teacher here. It's got the assessment area. And then it's got each of the call them learning targets, if you will, listed beneath that column. So we can see from a week to week basis. All right, this just provides me a big picture snapshot of how the kid's doing over time. So week 1, week 2, or however I want to denote that. I'm going to scroll down here to old Billy's to show you the comments that I made and how they would show up. There's Bill. So you'll notice I've got 2 comments listed right here. Bill had a little issue keeping his hands to himself. Much better job of being a safe and caring student this week. So this is exactly what is displayed on the parent portal or the family portal, as well as the student portal. So you don't have to necessarily guess at what the family's looking at. They're looking at the exact same thing you are on this report right here. So we can also email this report as necessary to primary contacts and to students. And if I enter my reply to email in this field, any replies that I get will come to the email that I've entered in here. I'm also going to show the assessment scores grid. And I think I actually need to set the correct dates in here before I do that. So I'm going to enter a from date of May 1st to an end date of the 30th. There we go. And this is kind of a nice report that I would maybe bring to a data dig. So I've got all of my formative assessments here listed, and I can see kind of a snapshot of what everybody in my class is doing regarding these targets. So if what you're digging into is more closely related to an academic goal, this can be a very handy report to bring some data to the table when you are working on, identifying some assessment practices or some instructional practices that might be effective, or trying to figure out what works for your kids and what's working for everybody. So these are great data pieces that you can bring to the table to those meetings to try to help student improvement. So if there are any questions, please feel free to throw them in that chat feature. Otherwise, it's time for JMC news and upcoming events. We finish up May. Oh my gosh, it's already the end of May with another installment of the 6 ways of grading. We're getting into the traditional grade book, the using points and percentages to calculate to a course grade. And we've got the top 5 summer to-dos at the end of May there on the 31st. We conclude the 6 ways of grading series on the 6th, aptly enough, on 6/6, the 6 ways of grading. Moving forward with JMC's grading solutions. So this will be more of a Q&A sort of session and a little bit of reflection. I think you'll hear from Paul Freed and Sarah Freed and myself on moving forward with the 6 ways of grading and just kind of putting a cap on all of the great grading solutions that JMC has to offer. On the 7th, we'll be going through how to manage your message settings in JMC Family, advanced JMC Teacher Series, Summer School, Message Center and Family App News on the 14th, and then adding a new Office user and understanding application security settings on the 21st. So as you begin thinking about next school year, there might be some weekly webinars that you want to attend as well. Are you interested in learning more about the assessment opportunities and options in JMC? I invite you to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel rather, to check out all of the 6 ways of grading series. I will guarantee you, no matter what your school's philosophical approach to standard-based instruction, assessment, and grading is, JMC's got you covered. So an option there to fit the need of any teacher. What's the best way to train your new JMC users? Let the JMC training team do the heavy lifting for you. This is also a great opportunity for those who aren't new to JMC but would like a refresher. JMC is always changing, it's always evolving, as should be your staff's use of JMC. So we would invite you from June until October to check out our new user series, where we will cover JMC's foundational skills and demonstrate time-saving tips and tricks. The first webinar in this series is on Wednesday, June 28th at 12:30. Join us for the summer conference. I'm so excited about this event coming up at the first week of August in Minneapolis. We're going to be at Twin Stadium, Target Field. On August 4th, we're going to be in Iowa at the FFA Enrichment Center in Ankeny. Grab your staff. If the more staff you bring, the more you increase your chances of winning a pizza party for your school. So how's that for some incentive right there? So sign up today, check out our Eventbrite page. Just head to Eventbrite, search JMC Summer Conference. You can find it. If you download this PDF, you can click that our Eventbrite link right there, and it'll take you right to that page. As always, we invite you to be social with us. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, at Online JMC, and check out our blog at jmc.com/news. I've been Jake Vanskoy. Thank you for joining me with this edition of the 6 Ways of Grading, and we will catch you on the flip side.